So Calvinism spread to Great Britain. So now should we talk about the Reformation that was happening in Great Britain? We know that when we talk about Great Britain, we're talking about those isles off the coast of Europe. Today we refer to them as the countries of England and Ireland and Scotland and Wales. All those countries together on those islands we refer to at this time as Great Britain. Actually, at that time, it's incorrect to say that because they were ruled by two different houses, two different families, if you will. There was the House of Tudor, which later would become England, and the House of Stuart, which would later become Scotland in the north. Interesting because, okay, there's England and there's Scotland. They're both going to have different friends. Tudor, England, is going to be an ally of Spain. Stuart, Scotland, is going to be an ally of France. See how complicated all this becomes in politics is so much a part of what we're studying here. Henry VIII, have we heard the name of this guy? Guy had different wives? Okay. Henry VIII started out with his first wife. Who was his first wife? His first wife was actually his brother Arthur's widow. Arthur married her, Catherine. Art and Kathy were married. Art passed away. Kathy was the daughter of Ferdinand and Isabella, King and Queen of Spain. This could be an opportunity. Why not marry my sister-in-law? Henry VIII married Catherine of Aragon. So the two of them are married now. And they cannot have a son. Why is it so important for a king to have a son? To be the next king. Okay. For them to have a son would mean that the next son is going to be the king. They couldn't have a son. They had a daughter, Mary Tudor. That was not good enough. I need a son. Kathy, give me a son. Kathy couldn't give him a son. What did they do? Henry was looking for a way to be able to get a son. So he was pushing then for the dissolution of that marriage. Henry asked the Pope for a dispensation so that he could get married again. But the challenge was that his wife, Kathy, Catherine of Aragon, she was the aunt of Charles V, who was the emperor. She tells Charles, oh, by the way, next time you're talking to the Pope, please don't let him grant that dispensation because then my marriage to him is illegitimate. Long story made short, the Pope would not allow Henry VIII to be dispensed from that marriage to Catherine of Aragon. Henry VIII reenacted ancient laws, putting the clergy under his control rather than the Pope's control. Follow me now? In England we had ancient laws, in Great Britain, where the priests didn't report to the Pope. They reported to the king. He said, I have an idea. Priests are going to report to me again. I have another idea. Rather than sending money to Rome, the priests will send their money to the king. At that time, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Thomas Cranmer, he had this vision where he was going to be leading the Reformation of the church. The church needs to be reformed in Italy and all of the places. We're going to do it ourselves here in England, as a church in England. And so in 1534, see how that plays together with some of these dates here? Shortly after 1531, after all this is happening with Luther, in 1534, Parliament followed the dictates of King Henry VIII, forbade payments to Rome. Anything you were sending to the Pope before now goes to the king. Declared Henry's marriage invalid so that he could marry again and have a son. And named Henry supreme head of the church in England. Henry died eventually. His son Edward VI became king for 6 years. Edward VI was a sickly young man. Continued various reforms, restored the communion cup to the laity, we've heard that before, allowed the clergy to marry, we heard that before, images were removed from churches, and the Book of Common Prayer was written so that we'd all be praying using the same words throughout England. Edward died. Who became queen after that? Mary Tudor, that was his first daughter. Have you ever drunk a Bloody Mary? Where does the name Bloody Mary come from? From Mary Tudor. Why? Because Mary decided that she was going to restore Roman Catholicism. Yes, I know that my father tried to wipe out Roman Catholicism and said that he was the head of the church. No, I'm going to talk to the Pope, and we're going to bring Roman Catholicism back. And anyone who used to follow my father's religion, Protestants, they are dead. Bloody Mary. Cranmer was later forced to recant. He was the Archbishop of Canterbury. He was called in before the Pope, and he said, "As for the Pope, I refuse him. for Christ's enemy and Antichrist with all his false doctrine. The Archbishop of Canterbury decided to stay with Henry VIII's vision of a Church of England. So his hand was held over the fire until it was charred. Ouch, imagine that, that would hurt. His hand was held over the fire until it was black, and because of that, he was seen as the national hero. Rather than give up his faith, Archbishop of Canterbury, he held on to his faith despite the consequences. Hero. Mary, Bloody Mary, died. Her half-sister Elizabeth, another one of Henry VIII's daughters from another marriage, from Anne, she became queen. Elizabeth became queen and was convinced that her father was right in declaring himself the head of the Church of England. So she's going to undo everything that Mary did. Mary decided they should all be Catholic. She says we're all going to be Protestant again. We're going to have the Church of England. She had the Book of Common Prayer rewritten to be more inclusive of all who were not extremes at the Protestant extreme or the Roman Catholic extreme. She formulated 39 articles to serve the doctrinal formulation of the Church of England. So all that was happening in England in the same time that all of this was happening in Germany and Switzerland. That was the House of Tudor, England. Right for the House of Stuart, Scotland. In Scotland, the Lollards, wait a minute, who did the Lollards go back to? That's John Wycliffe in England, in Great Britain. The Lollards of Wycliffe and the Hussites, John Huss of the Czech Republic, they were impossible to uproot from Great Britain, and so many Scots were now Protestant. Many people went off to Germany and studied. They came back to Great Britain, to Scotland. So there were a lot of Protestants in Scotland. The leader in Scotland was John Knox, if you've heard that name before. When persecution broke out, he was condemned to 19 months of forced labor. Later escaped to Switzerland when persecution broke out under Bloody Mary, Mary Tudor. He advocated for using the riches of the church to help the poor. How's that for a radical idea? Let's sell the gold altars that we have to be able to feed the poor. All of the riches that we're bringing back from the Americas, rather than using them to build gold churches, let's feed the poor with those resources. And to provide universal education. Wow, an idea of public schools before its time. Knox organized the Reformed Church of Scotland, which is essentially most similar to Presbyterianism today. We've heard of the Presbyterian Church. The Presbyterian Church really has its roots in Scotland in the time of the Reformation. The Presbyterians. What makes Presbyterians different? Presbyter, remember presbyter? Presbyter, what we today call the priests, the ancient church called presbyters, the elders. The elders are going to appoint the minister of the community. At Holy Family, we're going to pull together the elders, and it's those elders who are going to decide who the pastor is at Holy Family. Not some pope far away.
Was Scotland ever Catholic at one time?
Excuse me?
Was Scotland ever Catholic? Scotland, was it ever Catholic country?
Was Scotland Catholic? Most regions were Catholic, so Scotland, yes, was Catholic, but then we start getting ideas like Wycliffe's ideas, the Lollards, Huss's ideas, the Hussites, Luther's ideas were those who came over to Germany and studied and then went home. Scotland became more and more Protestant.
So why did Mary the First have Mary, Queen of Scots, beheaded for?
Why did she
Have Queen Mary of Scots beheaded for whatever reason was that for?
So the challenge is, back in that era, especially within families, we had to deal with those who could be successors to the throne in different ways. And so, for instance, when it came to Mary Tudor and Elizabeth, Mary's closest friends and advisors told her, Mary, you got to knock off Elizabeth. She can't be around. Mary, Bloody Mary, killed a lot of people. She couldn't kill her own sister. What happened? Her sister became queen after her. Mary, the Queen of Scots, same thing. When someone gets in the way, we perceive them as getting in the way of our power. We got to go. So all that's happening in Great Britain at the same time that these other things are happening in Germany and Switzerland.